How to make chocolate soufflés. I'll be giving you tips on how to nail that rise and get that airy chocolatey cloud every time. Now who's going to one-up your dinner party? Chocolate soufflés today. The recipe makes 2 soufflés. You get a bit left over, but I think it's good to have a bit left over just in case you need it. It's not enough for a third one though. The Ramekins, obviously we need 2 of them. These are pretty standard size. They are 8 centimeters across, 5 centimeters high. They hold about 225 milliliters, and that'll do. For ingredients, we need 25 grams of butter. You can see I put it in the pan because we're going to heat it. It's going to be the first step. That can just go straight in there. 15 grams of plain flour. We need caster sugar, 2 lots of caster sugar. I find it less confusing to weigh them out separately because we use them at separate times. So we need 38 grams for the caster sugar that we'll use in the chocolate base. And then we need 25 grams that I've measured out separately here. And that's for when we get to whisking the egg whites. We need 50 grams of dark chocolate. This is a dark chocolate souffle. I think 85% cocoa solids works really well for this because you get that proper chocolate flavour. I can't tell you the number of times that I've made a chocolate souffle and wished it was more chocolatey. So I don't do it to myself anymore. Half a tablespoon of cocoa powder, 100 milliliters of whole milk. I've got 3 eggs here. We actually need 2 egg whites and 2.5 egg yolks. All we need then is a couple of things to prepare the ramekins. We will need butter, unsalted butter. I've got some here. It's softened. It's at room temperature. I've just left it out of the fridge for an hour. So it's quite soft. It's very pliable. And then some more caster sugar for the ramekins. And for finishing, we need icing sugar, just for dusting over the top. It looks nice. First thing to do is to get everything ready in advance to save yourself the risk of drama later on. Put the oven on at 190 degrees Celsius. We're going to put the soufflés on the middle rack so you can get that ready. Also put a tray on the middle rack that we'll put the ramekins on. It just helps the heat to distribute nicely from the bottom of the soufflé. Crack open the eggs, split the egg whites from the egg yolks. Different bowls. The egg whites, you should put them in a bowl that you can use for whisking. I'm going to use this one. Got enough space for me to do hand whisking in it. A tip on bowls for whisking egg whites is copper is the best bowl that you can use apparently. If you don't have copper, you can use stainless steel or you can use a glass bowl. Stay away from plastic because it can keep hold of oily residues and that can affect the whiskability, the amount of air that you can get in and how big the volume you can get out of the egg whites. My eggs are cracked. I've got the egg whites in here, a nice clean bowl. And here are my egg yolks, such a nice colour. A couple of other prep things that we need to do is the chocolate, break it up. And then the last thing is we need to prepare our ramekins so they're ready to fill as soon as we have the souffle ready. So to do that, the butter is softened, so you should be able to brush it. So get a bit of butter, swirl it around the base of the ramekin, there, and then get some more butter and lift the brush strokes from the base of the ramekin all the way up to the edge. Get the butter in because you want to coat the edges. You want to create a wall of butter all around that separates the souffle mix from the outside of the ramekin so it doesn't stick and it encourages the rise. There, call that done. I don't know if you can see that. Same with the other ramekin. Here's the finished ramekins. Now we need to swirl some caster sugar around here to create another wall between the ramekin and the souffle. Put in about, I'm going to guess about a teaspoon in, so just put some in. Swirl it around and then we tap it out. I actually tap it straight into the other ramekin because I don't really like wasting anything. So swirl it all around the base and then let it come right to the edge here and then just tap it through. Keep going till you've got sugar that's adhering to all the moist bits of butter. These are our sugary, buttery ramekins. I'm going to put this in the fridge to wait. I'll put the butter on to melt. Then I'm going to add the flour and half a tablespoon of cocoa powder in there. And then when it starts to get bubbling hot, I'll take it off and we'll slowly start to whisk the milk in. When we start going in with the milk, it thickens very quickly. So I would say go slowly, add a bit at a time and whisk properly.
Smooth and chocolatey. Now that can go back on the hob for another 2 to 3 minutes until it starts to thicken, and at that point we're going to take it back off the heat again. Keep a lowish heat so you can control it. Right, I think that's done. Now that's off here, we go in with our chopped up chocolate, the 38 grams of caster sugar. Then we also add the egg yolks as well, but I'm just going to stir this first. That's our chocolate base done. Now we can go and pay attention to the egg whites. So now that we've made our chocolate base, we can set that aside to cool and we can get on to whisking the egg whites. We want to whisk them to stiff peaks. The best tip for this is to go slow. When you whisk slowly, that's when we get the maximum potential for air bubbles that we can introduce and the maximum volume. We want to get it as big as possible. If we whisk too fast, that can affect the structure and it can affect how much air and how big the air is that we can get in, and we want to maximize that. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to introduce the caster sugar. This is the 25 grams that we measured separately at the beginning. We're going to start gradually introducing that in when we get to the soft peak stage. That is the optimal time to add the sugar in. If we add it in too early, then that can affect how much volume we get to introduce, and maybe it won't get as big as we could get. And if you add it in too late, then it can affect the structure of the air bubbles. So maybe it will be a little bit easier for them to collapse. The reason why I add the sugar in gradually is so that we can try and get it as less grainy as possible. You might still get some grains, and that's okay. The idea is to whisk the sugar in so it kind of melts into the eggs, it becomes one mass. I'm going to hand whisk. I quite like this because it helps me keep control of every stage and what's going on. You can use an electric whisk or you can use a stand mixer as well. That will also work fine, but I would just remember that point about being slow, especially at the beginning. If I was going to put it in the KitchenAid with the whisk attachment, I would go in at setting 4 to start with and take it easy. If you're hand whisking like me, then you want to get the whisk under the egg white and lift it up and over. It's quite easy to kind of go side to side, but more than that, if you go up and over, we get maximum air bubbles, which is what we're after. First stage, we've got foamy on top, light bubbles. Starting to look foamy throughout, so all the way through it looks about the same, kind of bubbles, basically foam. So I think it's time to start adding the sugar in, little at a time. Look out to see what happens when you put your whisk through it and lift and see how well it keeps that shape at the top. So it's starting to keep that shape now. Stiff peaks is when we do that thing that we can lift the bowl and it doesn't move. You can lift it over your head and it stays there. That's what we're going to try. So just move the bowl. You can see that it's moving with it. So not yet, but we're going to wait for that moment. It can't be far away now. If you're wondering if I'm tired, then yes, it's getting tiring. But I think we might be here. We're here. Stiff peaks. So now that we've got stiff peaks, we're going to introduce the stiff peaks into our chocolate base. I would start with a couple of tablespoons-ish, and just to loosen the mixture. I took the chocolate base out of the saucepan and put it into this bowl instead because it's easier to fold the whites in here. Try and get around all the bits at the base that stay stuck, so try and get around all of the mixture. Half of what's left. The folding action is to use a spoon like this, turn, and then cut down, because it means that you don't lose bubbles like you would if you beat it or you just stirred it normally. That's our souffle mix done. Now it's time to fill this in our ramekins. Fill each one right to the tippy top, right to the edge, maybe even a little bit more, because we're going to level it off afterwards. So it's good to put more in so you get right to the top edge. I've made a lovely mess here, but there's more to come because now what we need to do is level off the top. When it rises, we want a nice flat top, and the way to do it is to get it level at this stage. I've filled them both way more than the top of this ramekin, and that's okay because now I'm going to skim the rest off back in the bowl. Get a knife. I've got a palette knife, that'll do. A regular knife is also fine, and just use the edge of the ramekin as your guide. Run it across, so anything that goes over that goes back in the bowl. There. And one more thing we need to do is run a clean finger around the rim. So between the ramekin and the souffle, you want to dip in, maybe about 1 centimetre deep, all the way round, and that encourages the rise. And that's it. These are ready to go in the oven if you're going to eat them straight away. Put them in about 12 minutes, I would, middle shelf on that hot tray that we put in. 12 minutes gets you a little bit of a gooey centre. I quite like a gooey centre, but if you want less of gooey centre, then go for 13 minutes. That should do the job. If you like more of a gooey centre, you can even leave it in for 11 minutes. That also works. You can use a cocktail stick to judge how well done it is in the middle. It won't make the souffle fall. You can actually make soufflés a couple of hours, maybe even more in advance, and keep it in the fridge until you're ready to cook it. When you put it in the oven, just add an extra minute if you take it out straight from the fridge. Just put them in the oven. So now I'm going to set the timer for 12 minutes. While they're in the oven, don't dally. Get everything ready because as soon as they come out, they'll have the rise and it will fall pretty quickly. So you want to eat them straight away. Get your plates ready. The ramekins will be hot, so you probably want to put them on a plate so you can eat them. Get the spoons out. You also want to get some icing sugar. Here's my icing sugar. Get it ready in the sieve. So as soon as it comes out, you can sift it over the top. It looks beautiful. If you've got something you want to pour on top, like if you want to pour some cream on or if you want some ice cream, also get that ready. If you need to get it out of the freezer so it's ready to scoop, get ahead. Not one to miss an opportunity to eat custard, I've made myself a thin, cold crème anglaise. I think it's a really nice contrast with the chocolate, but you actually have lots of options available to you. So I said about the cream, I said about ice cream. Another thing that I've got is some sour cherries in a jar. They're macerated in a jar. Someone sent them to me and I've been looking for ways to use them, but I think the chocolate souffle is quite a good opportunity for that. Other options could be, you could have a pistachio sauce. I think that'd be quite nice on top. A raspberry sauce. Of course, a chocolate sauce. Why not have chocolate with more chocolate? There are actually loads of options, so go crazy.
They'll be a bit jiggly straight out the oven. Dust, pour, adorn and embellish however you like, but do it deftly so you can get on with the glorious eating of it.